Ready to go ahead? Go ahead. Good evening, everyone who is invited back to our public meeting this evening. I welcome everyone to the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education this Monday night, October the 11th. We did begin the public meeting and we adjourned for executive session, and now we are back in public session. So I'll go ahead and read the public announcement. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by mailing copies of said notice to the record, filing copies of said notice to the municipal clerks of Hillsdale, Montvale, Rivervale, Woodcliff Lake, and publishing said notice in the record on May the 18th, 2021. So next we move on to routine matters. We have one consent agenda item. Can I have a motion? Okay. Very good. Any discussion?
Got feedback? I turned the mic on, I got feedback.
Try it one more time.
Mr. Blendo.
Here.
Dr. Blundy.
Yes.
Mr. Fronte.
Yes. Well, I thought we were taking it back. Yes. One more. Yeah.
Okay. And,
Yes.
okay. Mr. Fronte. Mrs. Martin.
Yes.
Ms. Molinelli.
Yes.
Mr. Stankus.
Yes.
Ms. Steffens.
Yeah.
We're approving the minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Mrs. Varghese.
Yes.
Mr. Weaver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. So before I enter into comments for the public, I just wanted to take a quick minute and share with the public how decisions at the Board of Education are made. At any time where we make a decision, sometimes we're making decisions that presuppose a situation in the future. You should know that the Board of Education at any time within a public meeting can take action and reverse any prior decision that's been set. So for example, a travel a decision that we would make where we would presuppose something would happen several months down the road is not written in stone, and that the Board of Education takes a lot of information. We make decisions at public meetings based on information that we get for the safety and welfare of the students. So with that being said, we now enter into comments from the public. If you'd like to make a statement, you need to identify the item on the agenda, and every statement or comment from the public in the first round must be directly related to an agenda item. Please state your name and your town of residence, and you will have a maximum of 5 minutes to be able to present to the board.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll take my mask off.
Yeah, welcome.
My name is Bob Axe. I'm a resident of Hillsdale, and I'm here to speak on item 7.1, I believe the travel decision. I had sent an email to the board over the weekend highlighting some statistics around COVID and Italy and with respect to travel. I'm not going to go through the whole email, but just to summarize 2 points. Cases in Italy right now are running at about 1/3 of that of the cases in New Jersey at this time. In addition, vaccine rates are about 17% higher in Italy than they are in the US right now. So those 2 data points alone probably require some thought on the more big discussion on the part of the board. Just know that it's right now safer to be in Italy than it is in New Jersey. My question would be for the board, how you can vote on the interim superintendent's decision to rescind when it is also in contradiction with some stuff that's on the CDC website regarding travel. Effectively, the CDC website says unnecessary travel should be avoided for unvaccinated people. The decision to rescind does not discriminate between vaccinated and unvaccinated. And what's more, it is unclear on the CDC website whether unvaccinated people can or cannot travel. It says they should avoid unnecessary travel, but then lists all the reasons or all the steps they need to take to allow them to travel. This is all 7 months in advance of the actual trip. We're going to see cases rise in the winter, as we do have the last 2 winters, and then likely fall. For example, when we look at the peak in Italy during the Delta variant of 2021, the case numbers peaked on March 23rd. When you reached March 26th, when the group is supposed to travel, cases had already fallen 88%, and we're down to 3,900 a day. They're at 3,000 a day as of last week, and this morning when I checked the website, I've sent you guys where I'm getting my data and the methodology behind it. Italy was listed at 2,200 cases. So it's a fluid situation. The data is sure to change, and it's far too early to make a decision, in my opinion, to rescind when our own CDC data is inconsistent in whether people are vaccinated or unvaccinated. And I just wanted to bring that up at this time.
Mm-hmm. Very good. We
That's it.
appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Francesca Silvano. I'm the Italian teacher at Pascack Valley High School. On behalf of the project, I would like to say that this is maybe a little bit more than a leisure trip. There is an exchange component that has been going on for 2 years with Italian authorities. Perhaps not everyone here is familiar with the school system back in my homeland. We don't have local district. We have one centralized government. Over the summer, I invested days, hours, travels to meet with the local school and make sure that we would go through with what would end with, the moment of the final meeting of having the kids together after the virtual exchange. As a matter of fact, and my supervisor, Noemi Rodriguez Grimshaw, is aware, starting next Monday, we will have synchronous classes with this Italian high school located in Massa in the north part of Tuscany. Because of our full day schedule and Italy being 6 hours ahead, also I would like to make a note that Italian high school schedule runs Monday through Saturday, 8 to 1. My Italian counterpart, the English teacher of the Liceo Linguistico, has made it mandatory for the children to return to the school building every Monday until June and made it a graduation requirement. These Italian students are giving up on sports, work, college planning, everything to be there and continue a project that has started 2 years ago and has been put on hold for obvious reasons for the past 2 years. Right now, with this graduation requirement pending on their end, I would just like you to consider this being more of a necessary travel, like Mr. Axe was saying. This is it. So really having this journey come to a happy ending for so many children who've been deprived of so much for the past 2 years. I'm also a mother in the district. My son attends the school as an out-of-district child, and I've seen the losses, and all I can say is they need a little bit of a reward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Cindy Reese, Pascack Valley High School, also a resident of Rivervale.
Terry Flynn, Pascack Valley High School, World History. I'm a resident of Mawa. I guess I'm still welcome, right?
We just wanted to speak and make sure that our company is represented and the protection that is provided for both students and staff. Obviously, safety of students and staff would be the foremost and the most important thing. Neither one of us want to be in a position where we are not safe, so therefore we would never put the students in that position. So travel companies have come a long way with COVID, and who you decide to choose as your travel partner makes a huge difference. Our company is called ACIS. They've been in business for over 40 years, and they have adjusted to COVID by some steps that I'll go through. They will not allow people to travel to a level 4 country. If that happens to be the case, they will relocate your trip if you would like. They'll allow you to reschedule for no additional charge to the students. Their travel insurance plans, they have something called an Ultimate Plus plan, which allows students to get a full refund 4 days prior to the trip for any reason whatsoever. They also have enhanced medical insurance that is provided with the Ultimate Plus insurance. So with that being said, let's say someone tests positive. The company pays for hotel, food, and allows an additional $150 a day for the adult and the student that is present on that trip. They also rearrange the flights to make sure that those people can get home, and they secure the hotel and any additional things that are needed for them. All travelers must be vaccinated to attend the trip. All tour directors, guides, full-time bus drivers are also fully vaccinated. The bus that holds our group is strictly our group and our school. No other school will be on our bus. So these are wonderful experiences and opportunities for these students, and they are very lucky to have these. Hopefully they can take advantage of these opportunities. And if there are additional questions or concerns that you need answers to, please ask us and we will provide the best we can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Dr. Fracella. Francesca Silvano is my wife. So you may think why I'm here tonight. Certainly I'm not here because of my wife. My wife can go to Italy anytime she wants. She's an Italian citizen. She goes every year for at least practically 2 months. So she said to me in passing the other night, she goes, you know, our trip may be canceled to Italy. And I said, why? I just couldn't understand why. I said, and they're having a meeting Monday night. And I said, okay, I'll come. I just want to see what your train of thought was. I couldn't understand why, as the world was opening up while you were closing down. So I said, and it's funny, I said, I spent 4 weeks in Italy. We went to 3 European countries. And we're not tourists, we're travelers. There's this distinction between a tourist and a traveler. These students are tourists, we're travelers. So we mingle in with the population. Okay, and we're into the rituals and traditions, and we eat with the people. Very different experience from what these students will be having. They're more segregated, everything's more, there are tours, they won't mingle in as much. So, and we came back perfectly fine. And I'm telling you, we were with a lot of people. A lot of people all vaccinated. We went to 3 European countries. We got swabbed on the way back, no problem. And this is what I can't understand. So I'm a physician. I work in Paramus. I've been an internist. I'm board certified and recertified internist. I've been in practice for 20 years. I'm a United States civil surgeon. And my field of interest is travel medicine, which doesn't mean I make house calls. It means that I hold a certificate in travel medicine issued by the International Society of Travel Medicine in conjunction with the CDC. Okay, so I'm considered a travel medicine expert. What does that mean? That means I provide care for international travelers. And I'm not talking about people who go to Europe. I'm talking about people who go to Africa, India, the Orient, South America. I provide consultations, vaccinations, chemoprophylaxis. I counsel them on food and water precautions, on insect bite precautions. I look at their itinerary, their medical history, look at their medications. I look at their itinerary. I have access to epidemiological data, and I put that all together, and then I formulate a plan. And I have to tell you that 99.9% of the patients who I see never come back sick because I counsel them properly. And if they come back only for a booster shot, or they come back because they're going on another trip. So if these children were to come to me, one by one, to ask me if they thought it was okay for them to go to any European country, and in this case, Italy, because I am here representing my wife, I would say, hands down, no problem. I would counsel them on wearing their masks when they're indoors, stay away from large crowds and so forth, and we know. And I would not hesitate to put my reputation on the line and give them the green light, and that's the way it should be. And then I would just say, I said, your group, you should be doing what's in the best interest of the students. By shutting them down, you're not. You may be doing what's in the best interest of yourselves. Because you may want to pacify your fears by being like Pontius Pilate. What the school wants is a board with character. And looking at the data,
If you'd like to comment on the facts, that's great. When
Okay.
you comment on the character of
All
the
right.
volunteers sitting around this table in front of the students, I would like just to
okay, but
caution
the
the
data's out
character
there, I
attacks.
said my piece.
Okay,
and that's it. Thank you.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Good evening. Eli Moa, Rivervale. I'm going to speak on the mascot. Tonight, we're moving forward with a process that is wrought with problems. As the board chooses a new mascot design, we once again find ourselves with the leadership leaving large gaps in the process that can prove to be very costly in the future. First, with all that we have been through as a community and with the cost of our schools going through the roof, how can the leadership of this board subject the community to additional expense and additional distractions when we need to focus on getting back to educating our kids? Our kids have lost a significant amount of time educationally because of the pandemic, and quite frankly, because of all the non-educational initiatives forced on them, like the mascot fiasco. And yet we still focus so much time on things that will not benefit them. To be clear, I think getting rid of the Indian was one of the dumbest ideas ever. And for the life of me, I don't know what the cowboy did to anyone. This entire affair was a charade, a power trip, and a tool of division. Because of the message that was sent from some people on this board that the mascot had to go because of cultural appropriation, we had children calling their classmates racist just for being supportive of the Indian mascot and our school's great heritage. The fact that the leadership of this board thought that it was important and worth a cost of $300,000 should scare every family and every taxpayer in our community. Our school budget has exploded in recent years. We are up 22% in just the last 4 years, with the cost per pupil going from $21,000 to almost $26,000 in that same period.
Are you speaking on the logo, or are you diverting to the budget? I'm not clear on.
It's the mascot. I'm talking about the mascot, and the mascot, thanks to you guys, is going to cost us a lot of money. So I think that's part of the discussion. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine.
Thank you. How can we entrust such a massive budget and operation to people who throw around hundreds of thousands of dollars on virtue signaling? And we'll be lucky if it only costs $300,000. And to put the shallowness of this endeavor into perspective, we live in a community that bears Native American Indian names on our streets, in our towns, and on our school itself. Has the leadership of this board discussed changing the name of the school based on the same rationale of changing the mascot? Do they plan on doing that at a later time? And how much will that cost us? Will we need to get another mascot once we make that change? And where does this madness end? This is truly the theater of the absurd, and we can go down an endless hole of nonsense with this line of thinking. Once again, the leadership of this board has decided to implement half-baked measures to address their bad policies. This process needs to be paused. We need to reevaluate every aspect of this mascot mess, with the cost being at the forefront. We simply cannot afford it. And this time, maybe we can do it with some transparency so that the community can weigh in on such an important decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Agenda item 7.1, D. Scachetti from Rivervale. I'd like to first thank Cindy Reese and team and ACES for putting together a great trip for the class this year. And I'd like for you to heed her words and wisdom in regards to the ACES program, and let them guide us as to how we make a decision moving forward, so that we can do it based on knowledge and information. As she stated, they made us aware back in September to increase insurances should we decide to keep, with the trip. And many of us did that for that purpose, because we really want our children to experience this wonderful thing that's going to open their eyes to the world and other cultures, and to learn from that, and to help prepare them for college and possible study abroad. So thank you again. If you could please, keep an open mind and hopefully defer as to we hear changes in both level and security risks and our own COVID boosters as they come out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Melissa Starr. I live in Rivervale. First, I want to thank you all for your time that you guys do volunteer and dedicate. I would like to second what Dee Scachetti said, as well as Mrs. Rhynes. We have, given that the company has very strict guidelines in terms of travel, and they've established these guidelines in terms of how they're handling COVID, particularly that all of the kids are, have to be vaccinated and everyone that they come in contact with is vaccinated. I urge you to not prohibit the trip from going if ASUS feels like it is able to safely bring the children to Italy to experience that. So, so I just urge you to, not make that decision for the company and allow the company to do what they feel like is right for the students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Hershkowitz, Hillsdale.
Steve?
I think we're all asking the wrong question. It's not why we shouldn't cancel the trip, but why should we cancel the trip? And I don't see any reason why we would cancel the trip. We've had COVID for 2 years now. We're going to have COVID for a lot more years, maybe forever, just like the regular flu. We get vaccinated. If we get sick, we stay home. That's our life from now on. So why are we canceling it this year? Last year we were probably afraid because it was new. It's not new anymore. Everyone here is probably vaccinated. Everyone on the trip's going to be vaccinated. If God forbid they get sick, they will be in a country that can take care of them, and they're not going to fly home and infect other people at the school, which is who you want to protect, the school kids. So I don't know how this works. We missed the meeting, or we were invited to the meeting where you decided why you did this, and that's all I want to know. Why was it canceled?
Feel like
It wasn't yet, and there was no meeting. It was presented to us for the first time tonight. Okay. And we're going to talk about it when it comes up. So thank you for your comments.
Would anyone else like to speak? Okay. What we would like to do then is move on to policy. We have 2 consent agenda items this evening. May I have a motion? Okay. Now we move on to discussion. Any comments?
Hold on a second. Let's just...
Policy just 1 and 2, right?
Just 2. Yeah, there would be
3.
2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, there's no discussion?
Not for
All right, may we have,
So, I'll speak to it. I mean, the public has asked why we're talking about it right now, so I will ask the question to confirm for myself. One, it's a recommendation from the superintendent.
Wait, we didn't
Wait,
take
we're
the
no,
vote.
we're on policy. We're not on
right?
education yet.
Take that back.
no problem.
That's why I go.
Yeah.
I jumped down, it was too
That's
late.
okay. Under education, it's all good. Okay, so we're under policy. We have 2 consent agenda items. Is there any comment on the 2 consent agenda items under policy? Okay, roll call, please.
Bad mic.
2. Claudia had updated the... I printed it before, okay.
Mr. Blundo?
Yes.
Dr. Blundy?
Yes.
Mr. Fronte? Yes. Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Molinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens? Mrs. Varghese?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Okay, next we move on to education. I would like to mention that when we make policy decisions, we don't make them on one trip that we approve or one trip we don't approve. We're a policy-making board. And when we look at making decisions, we not only take in feedback from individuals who very strongly believe in certain things passionately, we also listen to the opposite side of the story. So we take in a lot of information, and I do appreciate the fact that you've come this evening and to be able to share with us your perspectives and your positions, and we take everything into consideration. So with that said, I would like to ask for a motion for education.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and now we will move into the comment and the discussion portion of our education agenda with 2 consent agenda items. So travel abroad being one of them. Can I have your feedback?
I have,
Okay,
sorry,
let's let Mike go first.
Okay, so I know people are curious as to why this is on and what's going to inform our decision-making. For me, number one, it's a recommendation from the superintendent based on his meetings with school administrators. It's my understanding that for those who travel abroad, that there's still a need to test to get back into the United States, correct? Okay. Yes. So if there's a requirement to test to get back into the United States, for me, as a board member who has a responsibility to the district and all of our students and staff, if one student tests positive, even though they're vaccinated, that would require us to have one student behind, if not more, and that would also require us, my understanding is, to have 2 staff members behind, because really it's not, you should never have 1 staff with 1 student. So we'd need to leave 2 staff behind or in the country with 1 student. And we're responsible for that 1 student and those 2 teachers. And that, beyond the trip, which is educational, presents a significant, for me, liability to the district. Because we're responsible for the health and safety of our students. And I understand those who have spoken are speaking and advocating for the educational aspects of the trip. But there's still a requirement to test to get back into the United States. And that's beyond, for me, the educational aspects of the trip. And so when we look at this as board members, I look at that and say, I can't in good conscience approve that. Now, if that requirement to test back into the United States was gone, I don't know if we're having the same conversation. But there is that requirement, and I think that's the biggest reason why we are having it, among maybe others. But for me, that's the deciding factor.
I'd like to say something. Yeah, Dr. Blundy, please.
I just had a few questions. And maybe it might be a good idea, and I apologize, I think I got the name of the company, ASIS, to maybe ask them some of these questions to get further clarification. But what is the urgency on making this decision tonight? Is there a specific amount of time you have to prior to this trip, which I believe is in April? Right, April? No.
February.
February, I
Yes, the
apologize.
earliest trip.
February.
The trip in February, would need like a November 15th deadline to cancel, unless the parents, I guess, bought up the insurance in that premium ultimate.
Right. I mean, would it make sense to maybe have a session with ASIS to get a lot more of these questions answered? I mean, I don't know them, so I'm sitting here and I'm going to ask a bunch of questions that they might be able to answer better for us before we make this decision.
Well, why don't you ask them and we'll see if they need to come, because I shared some information, but.
All right, so you're saying that the parents have the opportunity to provide extra insurance, which would allow that November date to go further.
Yep.
So.
Yes, so. I
What
guess
would be that absolute cutoff?
The highest end insurance would allow them to make a sort of no excuse decision up to 4 days before.
So technically they could, if the parents choose to, they could purchase extra insurance, which would allow us to make a decision 4 days prior.
Or they could too.
I'm sorry?
Or they could too.
Or they can too. Okay, I don't know, I'm just trying to, I might have more questions, I don't know.
I agree with you, Dr. Blondin. I think that it's too early. I'm not a medical profession. I consulted a major hospital with the COVID patients, so I see it regularly. I think that we don't know. It could be great when these strips, or it could be a mess. And it's level 3, as I understand it, under the Mountain data and the CDC site, it's not prohibited. I don't want to make a decision too early. I think the public, in my opinion, should understand that we reserve the right as the board. We were elected, among most things, or all things, to take care of the students and the staff. So clearly, if it's a week before any one of these trips, and I think they really need to be broken down trip by trip, based on the travel dates, and of course the location. I'd like to make a motion to table this item, take it off the agenda tonight, give us a chance to do some due diligence, be fair about it, but that's a completely, total open book. We just want to be responsible. We know parents and teachers don't want to put themselves or the students in harm's way. We respect you guys. We love them just like you do. That's why we're all here volunteering. But I think that if we have to cancel a trip at the last minute, please understand it's not the mean hand in the sky smacking something down. It was purely about health and wellness, and no other agenda but that. I would just like to remove it from the agenda. Maybe we can modify the language for the next meeting, something that we're going to look at these one by one. We're going to take the guidance of the governmental agencies having jurisdiction. Obviously watch each of these countries' websites as well. They know their situation best. And try to have an open mind about it.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. We have a motion on the table. We need to vote specifically to remove this item from the agenda.
But isn't there discussion now on the motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should discuss it.
On the motion to take it off the agenda, that's where the conversation lies.
So I have a comment. So
we have a first and second. It's just parliamentary procedure. So
Wait, no.
aren't we still in
We have
discussions?
to go through discussion and then the motion.
First and
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
for this one.
I think it's a little premature. We
Yeah.
haven't finished
to pull it from the
discussing.
agenda, there's been a first and second motion to pull an agenda item off the agenda.
But I
We have
think
the
that,
opportunity to finish this.
I want everyone to talk, so if you please talk.
Yeah.
I want to hear what everyone has to say.
Withdraw the
so.
second, we're back on, and then we can remove that, is that?
If you pull something off of an agenda, it's no longer open for discussion. It's off the agenda to be discussed at a later
All right, so
time.
he's not
Okay, so I
making
do a
a
motion to
He's going to rescind
rediscuss.
his motion until we all discuss.
Okay, so
and
you,
then he'll
I'm
put it
sorry,
back
you
on.
rescinded your motion?
No, what I'm saying is, I think we should take it off the agenda.
Right, and that would require a formal motion to
Are
remove
you
it from the
making a
agenda.
motion, Mike, or do you want us all to discuss?
Yes. All right, I would like to make a motion to remove it from the agenda this evening for further consideration on a country-by-country basis. Talk about the insurance coverage. Should we mandate it? Just get through my thought process. I think we're going to strongly need to have everyone consider that insurance that gives us 4 days to pull the trigger. If, God forbid, we're concerned that there's a problem somewhere. But
And I
want to move it
understand.
tonight. I don't want to cancel.
If there's a
it tonight.
first and second motion to remove something from the agenda, it pulls it out of the agenda and there can be no further discussion at tonight's meeting. It's not voted on tonight, it's tabled.
We just want
But
to
if
talk.
we still want to talk, we can vote down, excuse me,
Not
we can
yet.
vote
Don't
down
make
the
the motion
motion to
yet.
table and resume the conversation.
Yeah.
If Mike rescinds his
He doesn't
motion
have
to pull it.
We
No,
can take the
because then we have a
vote,
first and
and we can
second.
vote no to the motion to table, and then we're back in discussion.
That's absolutely correct, but we first need to vote on
Correct,
whether.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I misunderstood. So that we're clear, what we're doing as a matter of parliamentary procedure is we are taking a vote whether or not to pull this agenda item off the agenda. If it is voted and passed, it will be pulled with no further discussion. It will be discussed at a later time. If it is denied, then we can continue discussing it in tonight's meeting.
So roll call.
So roll call.
Mr. Belinda.
On the motion to table, I vote no. Do not table.
Dr. Blondin.
I vote yes to table to get more information before I make a decision.
Mr. Fronte.
Same thing. Yes, the table, get more info.
Mrs. Martin.
No, I want to discuss this before we table.
Ms. Molinelli.
I vote to table this motion, to take it off the agenda to be discussed in detail at a further time.
Mr. Stankus?
I vote to discuss before we table. That's a no.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Steffens?
No.
Mrs. Varghese?
No, so we can discuss it tonight.
Mr. Weaver?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
We can put it back on,
Even if it's
Mike.
voted no right now, we can discuss, and then
And
it
then-
can.
Yes, come back to a motion.
Exactly.
I would like everyone to be able to discuss it now, so I vote no now.
Okay.
In this round.
Can we discuss now?
Now we can keep
Okay.
going.
Okay.
So,
So the motion goes down, which means that the agenda item is still on the agenda and is open for continued discussion from members of the board.
okay, so I am a medical professional. I'm a nurse practitioner. And during all of this COVID time, you know, we've asked people to have patience and see what happens, because week to week things change. And that has been with wearing masks, vaccinations, all the things that we've done in school. We've asked people to have patience with us as a board, because every week everything changed. So now I think that we should have patience and see what happens for these trips. I really do feel like these kids have been through a lot. They've missed a lot. And I think to throw our hand across the table and sweep everything off the table at this point is, sure, sort of protecting liability, quote unquote, but I think no parent is going to put their child into a situation that puts their child in harm's way. I do think that come January, I mean, what Mr. Ack said, sure, it may go up, but it may not. I mean, apparently today, I just read that cases are actually down across the country. So for me, my recommendation for this board is going to be that we wait and see. As people have had, as generally, people have had patience with us in us making our day-to-day decisions throughout COVID, I think we should have patience and understanding for the students and the families, and really see what we can do to nurture these kids' experiences with the understanding that, yes, if the situation changes in a really negative fashion, sure, you know, we may have to remove these trips. But at the same time, if things seem okay, I mean, this is healthcare. Things can change in the drop of a hat, and it can change positively or negatively. So let's wait and see is my thought.
I'd like to make a few comments. One of the things I would like to find out from the travel agencies that are hosting these trips is if they actually look at hospital capacity at the time. The most important and critical thing is, what are the medical facilities like in the areas that these students are traveling? Everything that we've been based on in the past 2 years, whether we open a school, go hybrid, go virtual, has been based upon the hospital capacity and what is going on. And there may be issues with the trip, God forbid, that a student has an accident, non-COVID related, and that hospital is going through something in that country. So that's very important to me as a parent myself. It would be very important to me to know what it's going through at that time, and I want to know that the travel agencies not only just guarantee, you know, the insurance and everything, but, you know, I think we need a breakdown of the numbers and where they are and where these children are traveling to, because there are concerns about that. We know what happened in Italy the year before, and how their hospitals were stretched full to capacity, and it went like that so quick. So that is a concern of mine. That being said, we look at the data, we make the decisions. So, I think it should be on a case-by-case basis. I think we should look at the data, look at what the travel agencies are saying about that, look at what the State Department is saying, all those things. And yes, that 2-week quarantine coming back, that is a concern. I agree with Mike on that as well.
I have something to ask. I have a couple of concerns too. I also have a concern about the staff members that are going to be attending. We have a 1-to-6 ratio, right? Is that correct? So how many students in total are going to be going on all of these trips? How many staff members are going to be attending in total? So as of right now, how many students are registered to go? Maybe the insurance. Okay. Okay. So we have about 5 to 6 teachers, and they're teachers, correct? They're not. So teachers. So one of my big concerns is, so we're going to be leaving behind possible if there is a COVID issue with a student. We're going to be leaving behind those teachers. They have to then in turn, they're not going to be able to return to their classrooms on the way back. And those students that haven't attended this trip are not going to be able to have those teachers back into the classroom. So not only are they impacting the possibility of an impact in the foreign country, there's an impact to the students that are not attending. So that is a concern for me. And I also wanted to know, because this is, I think, brought up, and I think it's valid, how many people have this insurance, this elevated insurance, and can we make that mandatory?
I didn't get the exact number, I don't have it, I'm told most do have it. We can put the criteria, but this is already history. They can sign up for the insurance, I think, up to so many days before the trip starts. And I think all of them fit that criteria, but that's added that to the balance.
So if there's something that we can do to make that mandatory, then we don't have to even discuss this right now. We can move this forward and look at it again when we get closer to the actual trip. Correct?
We have 2 more, if for whatever reason it's tabled or voted down tonight, there's 2 more board meetings where the decision must be made, because by November the 15th, the board needs to pull the trigger on a decision one way or the other. Is that correct?
For the
Italy.
But if we make this requirement, is what I'm saying, if we make this a requirement for this Italy trip, then we don't have to do this anymore. I mean, we can just stall.
Because then the November date no longer is the drop dead date. It's 4 days before the trip, if everybody has the insurance. And then if there's a spike in January and we pull it because because of everything everybody said, we know that the folks will be able to get their money back.
How much is the insurance, that additional insurance? $500. $500, okay. Now, is the money that families have put in already, is that refundable?
Up to, well, for those who paid the insurance,
Yeah.
up to 4 days, but I
Okay.
believe all or most for the earlier trip by November 15th.
So,
money back for the trip, you lose the cost of the insurance. Based on the 500, you can get the full amount back.
So-
It depends on the dates, like we're traveling at the end of the
Okay, unfortunately, we're right now not in public comment, but we'd love to hear from the public when we are back into public comment. It's just really important we follow the agenda so that we all have a chance to speak in the right context. So right now, we're in board discussion over this item. Is there any
so
other discussion?
we're gonna hopefully then, if we table this, we're gonna break this future vote up by trip, not in one vote. And I think at that point, we're going to follow the direction of the CDC, not a travel agency, correct? Because I don't want to go to a travel agency for my information. I really want to go, just like we have with the schools, to the CDC and the health department and those groups that have medical backgrounds.
Yeah, the superintendent will report to us all information that's available. We can do a trip by trip, if that's at the will of the board. It's up to all of you.
So
And-
in follow-up to that question, just for clarification. Don't want me to talk. So just for my clarification, the November 15th date is for Italy, Greece, and that's if you don't have the higher level of insurance. Does that same 3-month timeline apply to the Europe, the France, and the other Italy trip? So Europe 414 would be January 14th.
I believe so. The last Italy trip, I don't know, but I can get that information.
And are these just Pascack Hills students, current
Valley.
and Valley?
Just-
Sorry, we're in Hills, so I'm,
Just Valley.
oh, it's just Valley. So it's just current Pascack Valley High School students?
But no graduates.
There shouldn't be. It should only be students, we have a supervisory rollover.
Doesn't say that on the agenda, though.
What?
It says it's
Oh,
for
it's-
Valley.
Yeah, I thought there was trips that were saying that because students didn't get to go last year, they would okay them coming from college. That's what I remember discussing at one point, but I
From
was
college?
In May.
This
Oh,
board,
that's
this Board of Education is only responsible for current students that fully participate within the district.
So that trip in Italy does not have the, because from what I remember, it said because they missed their trip last year.
There are people nodding their heads.
That the trip was put to the end of May so that these college students could come back and actually join this trip. So I think that's something that needs to be checked out.
Yes.
So given all the things we've discussed, I think we do have time. I have a certain feeling based on the information I have available to me now. This other piece with people who are not currently students is another, I think, issue that we need to explore and see how that lines up with our policies and procedures. I'm in favor of, should someone decide to make a motion to table it, to have more discussion, because I think it's necessary. But again, based on the information I have now, I know how I feel about it. Should information change, then, certainly I'd be willing to reconsider.
I'll renew Mike's motion to table this, and, well, that's my motion.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, Mike, you seconded?
I did. I second the
Okay.
motion.
So we have a motion on the table to pull consent agenda item number 1 from education.
Yes.
Roll call.
Mr. Blundo?
Yes.
Dr. Blundy?
Yes, and I did want to hear what everyone had to say, so I apologize for the confusion.
Mr. Bronte? Yes. Mrs. Martin? Yes. Ms. Molinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Stephanie?
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Okay, so we have pulled the consent agenda item out of education. Right now, we have one item under education, which was number 2, which is now number 1. May I have a motion?
We already got it.
We haven't voted on education, yeah. So can I have a motion to vote on the one? Okay, so Mike, Kristen. Okay, is there any discussion on the remaining item in education?
You guys could stay for the rest of the meeting, you don't have to leave us.
Okay.
All right. Keep going.
Okay, so no discussion? Okay, so there's no discussion, so I'm clear on the second one. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Blundo? Yes. Dr. Blundy?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante? Yes. Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Molinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffen?
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Very good. Now we move on to Human Resources with 11 consent agenda items. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Very good. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, may I have roll call, please?
Mr. Blundo? Yes. Dr. Blundy?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante? Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Molinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffen?
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Abstain 10A and take 10B, yes to everything else.
Abstain 10A and 10B?
Yes.
Okay, very good. We move on to Finance with 13 consent agenda items. May I have a motion?
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I ask for roll call, please.
Mr. Blundo? Yes. Dr. Blundy?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante? Yes. Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Molinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffen?
Yes.
Mrs. Varghese?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Very good. Next, we move on to old business, and we are now under board committee reports. I believe there's a policy committee?
Yes, there was.
Very good.
Just give
Mr.
me a
Stankus,
second.
the floor is yours.
There was actually two meetings. There was, I'll start with the one that I have available right now, but there was a meeting of the larger group of the Curriculum Instruction Committee and Technology Committee. And basically, it was a rehashing of what we went over on a smaller committee, but to the larger community. The different supervisors spoke about their goals for curriculum for the year coming up, and also looking down the road in the future. And there was discussion of the movement of the math and moving geometry in a more productive grade level, you know, so that it would sync up better. There was discussion, let's see, what else do we have here? The music curriculum revisions. There was discussion about, Mr. Orlak spoke about enhancing the business department offerings. So there was quite a lot of discussions, and it's all in the minutes and the report. If anybody'd like to look that over, or, you know, anybody have any questions about the larger committee, I can answer those possibly. All right. We also had a policy committee meeting, and I'll bring that up. We discussed the various policies. Now, a lot of these policies are mandated. A lot of them were revisions. Certain ones were abolished because they no longer applied, but we had a comprehensive health and physical education mandatory revision. We had a few other revisions. Fire drill was revised, school nutrition program revised. I have a list of all the revisions in the minutes if anybody wants to see those. But if there's any questions that anybody has, we also did the road forward, of course. That was new and that was added in. Okay. There was talk about the overnight trips and what we're doing with those, as well as the, you know, overseas trips. So, of course, we all agreed to look at that more carefully. So that's good. And that's it. That's about it.
Very good. All right. Any questions for Jim on either of those two committee reports? Okay.
I'm learning to, you know.
You're excellent. Any other old business?
I think this falls under old business. I just wanted to thank officially Ms. Lindstrom, who invited us into her classroom for the honey extraction demo. I think I learned more in that hour than I have in years. It was just very exciting, and I feel so fortunate to have teachers like her in this building, or in the district, I should say. We're not in that building. And I do think that these kids are very lucky, and I really hope to be able to highlight more of the great things the students are doing in this district and how hard the teachers are working, and especially thank her father for also joining in and helping with the process. It's very exciting, and from what I understand, we're the only public school in New Jersey that has a program like this, so kudos for this district to have something like that.
And I do believe you got to take honey home with you. Yes, excellent. So we'll be waiting for a report on how it tastes.
Oh, it's delicious.
Oh, it's good, okay. That sounds great. Is there any other old business? Okay, seeing none, we move on to new business. I would like to just briefly report that we interviewed 3 agencies this evening in our efforts to be able to identify a new superintendent come July of 2022. We had interviewed an agency prior to that, or an organization prior to that, and that search will take place. My recommendation would be is that we give ourselves a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks to be able to do due diligence and really process and understand what these agencies can bring to bear, how they're going to connect with the community, how they're going to develop processes in this very important selection of our superintendent. The 2 things that the Board of Education does as our number 1 priority is select the superintendent as the CEO to run the district and to oversee the administration in both high schools. And the second, of course, is to develop policy for the district. So that would be my recommendation. I'm happy to get feedback from my colleagues in regards to this process. They did recommend that a board liaison would be selected. So I think that we might want to have some discussion on how that process works and how you'd like to make that come about. So, thoughts, comments?
I think the 3 or 4 weeks, actually, I think it's even a little longer than we need, but that's fine. Definitely, let's push it out past any elections, and so we know who's here, who's not.
I agree.
And as far as the liaison, whoever steps up, they need 1 contact, so maybe 2, to your point, in case that 1 person can't do it alone.
I think that would be great. It could be the board president who is ever sitting in the seat come January. It could be an individual if you want, anyone on the board wants to act as that liaison.
I would love to.
Deborah, you'd like to do that?
I'd love to.
Okay, that sounds great. I am happy to help with that process, but very excited that you'd like to volunteer for that. So my thinking is our next board meeting is just simply too soon. We all have packets of information. We sat through the interviews this evening. If you have any questions, I would like for you by the end of the week to be able to get questions to me so that we can respond to each of the organizations to make sure that we have done all the due diligence and have asked every question that we need to ask prior to really making a decision about which organization to select. This is really important that they engage with the community, that they have a solid process in the selection, and that the Board of Education, as a team, we make the best decision for our kids and for the district. So, is there any other new business before we go into the agenda items here? Okay, Yas, you are up.
Okay, so this is part of the board goals, which was to learn a little bit more about school finance. We're starting off with the bills list and the transfer report. And what you have in front of you is a key to the bills list. We'll do that first. And what you also have is an example of a bills list, and it's numbered. So we'll go through this, and if you have any questions, please raise them. So the first one is the check number. The second one is the purchase order number. Number 3 is the check date. Number 4 is the date the requisition was requested. Number 5 is the vendor code. Number 6 is the name of the vendor. Number 7 is a brief description of the purchase. Number 8 is the GAT account number, and that's something that we are required to do in public school purchasing. Number 9 is an internal code for us. Number 10 is the check batch date. Number 11 is the amount of each item being purchased. And, well, when I say purchase, on the particular purchase order. Number 12 is the check amount. So, for example, when I said something about the amount of each item, if you go down to about the middle of the page, you'll see Carolina Bio-Supply Company. And then you'll see 3 items of various science supplies being purchased. And then you'll have, to the very right, parallel to the Carolina Biology Supply Company, you'll see a total. And there's 3 items, and that's basically what happens. It's totaling one check for those 3 items. So that's really it as far as the bills list. This is what the Finance Committee gets. The board gets something a little more, not as many things as all the 12 items, because there's some things that are really unnecessary for your purview. But the Finance Committee goes over it, and the last page is the total by fund, and then it's summed by a Finance Committee member and dated. Any questions on the bills list? I think it's somewhat straightforward, so hopefully that helps. Next, we'll move to the transfer report. And the transfer report. Again, you have P and you have various columns numbered. So number 1 is the budget line number. That is a state number, okay? That's something that the state program has. Number 2 is the budget category. Now the budget category breaks out all different, it's again by GAP account number. So number 3 is the GAP account number, and it's collapsed and truncated because you can have more numbers. It's usually 6 sets going across. And usually the last 2 happen to be like location, so it's usually a code for one of the high schools. And then also at the very end, sometimes you have very similar things, so we give it a different code number, so we distinguish. Number 4 is the original budget amount. Number 5 are encumbrances. These are purchase orders from the previous year that have not been fulfilled. Number 6 is the original budget plus the encumbrances from the previous year. Number 7 is the maximum amount that can be transferred. Number 8 is net transfers, either transferred out of those accounts or transferred in. Number 9 is the percent change or transfer amount. Now this cannot exceed 10% transferred out of an account on a cumulative basis. Otherwise, it requires county approval.
So just to make, if it's $1 million line, we can transfer up to $100,000 without county approval.
Correct.
Okay, if we wanted to exceed the 100,000, we would need county approval.
That
If
is
we were
correct.
underspending because the football field was half the price we budgeted for, make it simple, then we could apply to use that somewhere else. Transfer if it's, but if it exceeds 10%, then we need approval.
You need county approval, there's a form for it, I submit it. If we do not get a response within 10 days, it is deemed approved. Usually what I do, I haven't had to do it here, but in another district, we had some things the auditor wanted us to change, so I submitted the form and I called the county business administrator just to discuss it and explain why this was coming. And it's no problem, they'll
And you have not had to do it in your year plus year?
Yes, that is correct. Year plus, and the other 3 years.
And
that I
the
was
3
here.
years back.
So I've never had that. But sometimes you get these emergent situations where you do have to make these transfers. So again, going back to 10% transfer on a cumulative basis, So you may transfer more than 10% into an account. Accounts, and I put them down, it's 11,000,230, 11,000,240, 11,000, it's 251 and 252. You cannot exceed 10% into or out of those accounts without county approval. But this requirement was also waived due to COVID, but only for this year, in the 21-22 school year. Number 10 is the remaining allowable balance from an account if factors transfers made. Also, the remaining allowable balance, number 11 is the remaining allowable balance to an account, again, factors the transfers made. Okay, so it gives you an up-to-date picture on a monthly basis. So that is the transfer report.
So yes, and I've been through this, so I kind of know it, but I want to be clear. If we underspend in a line at the end of the year, that goes in, describe what happens to those monies.
Okay, so we're not talking about transfers.
We're not.
We're talking about excess surplus. So that's what it's called excess surplus. And every June, we make a resolution, generally not to exceed a certain amount of money going into capital reserve and possibly into maintenance reserve. There's also other reserve accounts like an emergency reserve, which is very difficult to do. And then there's also something called tuition reserve. But mainly we put money into the capital reserve and the maintenance reserve. And that's to do projects. So whatever we do, we have the audit done, the auditor presents it and says, okay, here you're not to exceed. How much do you want to put in there, and then how much do you want to have excess going into a future budget? And that is what is presented to the Finance Committee, and we discuss it, and I make my recommendation, and then after that, it'll go on the agenda, and then the entire board will be able to see that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a quick comment. I think it's also important to mention that every committee during the year is always paying attention to what their goals are. So the Buildings and Grounds Committee is already setting the stage to make recommendations for the things the school district needs. So it's not like y'all sits down and says, this week I'm going to do the budget. It is very much an ongoing, prioritized set of activities that take place based on a very prescriptive way the school district can and cannot spend money, with the priorities that are set by the board and the committees as we go through the whole year. So it's just important to understand this a little daunting, overwhelming process by which a very large school budget is actually developed and how we spend money. And so Joe's point, we've been through this for years.
Right. It's new, and it's good to hear a refresher now and then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes. Okay, next we move on to discussion in regards to the Personnel Committee.
Yep, so in the briefing this week, as I said, I did some research on possible items that a Human Resource Personnel Committee could do. So if you remember what I commented about, certain items. So first of all, this committee is not involved in the hiring process. That's for the administration to do. But they can review job descriptions. And as I said, this is something, I'd like to work on this year. As time goes on, job descriptions get a little bit antiquated, and it's always good to look at those and refresh them, and then in the May meeting when you reorg and re-adopt job descriptions, policy, curriculum, and such, that's a good time to approve those. Review personal needs of the district. I said this is done through the budget process here. Some districts use it as a negotiations team. I think that's sort of an ad hoc committee that's developed at the time that's necessary. So, that's a committee that sort of goes dormant in between contracts or that need isn't necessarily used in between contracts. Administrator keeps the board apprised on any litigation concerning employee contracts, and that has to do with the next one about grievances. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of that, if at all, and that's done through the briefing, or in some cases, if necessary, exec session. Keeps apprised of the administration's relationship with its professionals, the board attorney, if we have a labor attorney, auditor, architect, and other professional services. Again, I said this is done through the briefing, and if necessary, an exec session. The administration keeps apprised the district's employees' vacancies. We share that information in the board agenda through resignations and then filling those positions. There's something in New Jersey called position control. So if someone vacates a position, it has a distinct number, and that when that position is full, it can't be filled by anyone else. And that's not due to anything that happens in our district, but there are districts out there that made this necessary because of things like no-show jobs.
Yeah.
But everyone in New Jersey, if someone does something wrong, we all have to do something. And then review administrative structure as needed. And I said, again, this is done, with the entire board, usually in exec session, because it could impact someone's current employment. And then the other, some districts use it to review personnel policies. I said we do have a policy committee of the board. So the items that could be done by a personnel policies, a personnel committee or a human resource committee, I think are done by other committees and other ways of communicating with the board. But I said I'd bring it to the board for discussion in this meeting in October, and that's why we're here. Only for this, no.
Well, my only comment on the Personnel Committee, being that it is negotiation committee on the years that we're negotiating, there's 3 of us that are educators. I don't know, the committee would have to be narrowed down to, I think, others, so.
Right. So you wouldn't be permitted to be on a negotiating team?
Right.
Jen, you talked about job descriptions. What about minimum, and maybe it's part of the description, in my professional world we keep it separate, but what about qualifications, right? Is that in the job description, or can the personnel committee set, that the chess coach has to have been a level 5 master? I don't know.
Yeah, but I would be a little bit more, so because we're highly regulated, people need the proper certification to be in their positions.
That's your qualification.
Yes.
So there's very few positions in education that no certification is necessary. So from administrator through the platform, they're all necessary. So even the chess coach, we would hope that the person would have some experience with chess, and most likely they would, because it would be very clean public service. But that person would need, if it's a teacher in the district, they qualify with that experience because they are certified. But at minimum, you would need like a sub-certificate to do your own children, because with that comes criminal history background, things of that sort.
So basically what you're saying is that the state regulations really dictate who we can hire and who we can't. Because, that's what it comes down to. Why did you pick this person over that person? And the board can't make that decision, but can the board, through job descriptions, set criteria that go beyond the state regulations?
You could.
I'm not saying, I don't even say I want to, but I'm just,
No,
yeah.
I'm saying you could, but you wouldn't want to paint the district into a corner that they couldn't fulfill one of the requirements, and then that person...
I can't get a coach because nobody's got this qualification. Okay.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it could go into the policy committee, either the policy or negotiations, like you said. Like, I think other committees are absorbing most of the other things you're talking about. So I really don't think there is a need for it either.
Well, what he's saying is to extend the negotiating committee, since that committee's already involved in personnel. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
What I meant was this committee, when I did the research on what other districts have, and not a lot of districts have
Right.
this committee, that one of the things that committee can do is
Okay, all right.
I think the cricket has something.
Is that a phone or a cricket?
I guess that says no.
We're hearing crickets.
Crickets.
All right.
So, up next, we have an opportunity to chat a little bit about the logo. Paul Zeller is here with us tonight to talk about process. Our job as a board is to understand that we work by committee, and that a committee has been formed by a large group of individuals to make the decisions. And so, if anyone has any questions for Paul, he's going to kind of walk through the process, and we can address any concerns that are addressed today.
So could I just clarify a point? Like, in the world of committees, because we operate in a committee structure, committees don't make decisions, committees make recommendations. Okay. Because I thought I heard you say that committees make decisions. Committees don't make decisions.
Report to the board.
Recommendations. Right.
The Board of Education, based on a set of criteria that we set prior to the committee doing its work, we vote on it based on that set of criteria.
Before this starts, can I just comment quickly on the process? Mr. Zeller, I watched him do this process with students, and I was floored at his rapport with students in our district and how those students felt heard and respected, and he wouldn't move on to anything until he made sure that everybody understood, was in agreement, and I really want to commend you for the endless work and time you put into this. Thank you.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Zeller. I'm the Director of Technology and Communication. It is essentially two different jobs, more tonight on the communication side than the technology side. I was tasked by Dr. Gunderson to organize and lead the mascot design selection committee. I come to this with no bias, no dog in the race. To be perfectly honest with you, I probably could care less about all of it. I'm simply here to help facilitate the children and facilitate what goes on. And I stayed in my lane. I have nothing to do with finance. I have nothing to do with any of these things. I was simply organized the children and the staff to come up with these designs. So I want to talk a little bit about the process itself. Committees were formed. It was largely the mascot selection committee. Committees from each school. Some of those people chose to drop off, and we filled some seats with those who were interested. The committees were comprised of students, and it was a range of students, boys, girls. It was some art students, some athletes, some, I'll say, traditional students. It was all over the map. So it wasn't a committee of art students or a committee of sports athletes. We had teachers involved, and each committee had one art teacher. Each committee had, I'll say, a non-art teacher. Each committee had coaches on it as well. The athletic directors were on the committee, but I set forth with them right away. They were not to be involved with what they felt the design should look like. They were there as a resource to explain what would and would not work in the event we went with a specific design. So for example, certain things would not be able to print on a t-shirt particularly easy. There are certain colors that you just cannot get for a uniform, those types of things. So they lended their input with regards to that. But with regards to design, it was left to the students and staff. In addition to that, the principals were on the committee, and Mrs. Martin, as she mentioned before, she sat in on the Pascack Valley committee. We did hire a consultant. The board approved that in March. And with the consultant, we got a graphic designer as well. The consultant sat on the committee as well. She did lend her opinions and expertise based on previous designs she's done for other school districts. She has done this for other public school districts in the state of New Jersey. The committees worked with the consultant to craft the designs. She did not tell them what to do. She said to them merely things that worked and didn't work in the past. She gave them ideas and thoughts. She gave them the criteria that we needed to establish to get this done, and we let the students and the staff drive those decisions. The designer came up with 4 designs per school. Committee refined and narrowed those designs with the intent of a vote, which we're hoping to happen soon. And then finally, once the designs are selected, a style guide is developed, which I'll go into in a little bit. Details about the process. The committee, according to the consultant, was to establish colors, fonts, words that embody the mascot design, and initial ideas on the design. Now, people get tripped up on the colors. It was never intended, nor did discussion occur to change primary colors. The simple question was, do we add an accent color that will allow for some design flexibility? Nothing more. Pascack Hills is still brown and white with orange accent. Pascack Valley is still green and white with gold accent. Both schools, in the end, added an option for a color. I'll call it gray. I'm sure there's some other fancy art term that I don't know, but of a gray, so this way they had the option to make some design changes, but never to be the primary color. That information is sent to the graphic designer, who then takes all of that information that's in that first bullet and comes up with those initial designs. Revisions are made as necessary. This goes back and forth, and as Mrs. Martin can attest to, it went back and forth quite a bit to the designer. And then the committee, like I said before, narrows it down. Typical time this process is supposed to take, according to the consultant that's done this for districts in the past, is 4 to 6 months. The district requested 2 major changes to the process that were set forth in the previous slide that the designer had set, that the consultant had set. First, the committees required that the students and staff be surveyed for input. In previous iterations of this, the consultant has relied on the committee to make these decisions solely. Given all that transpired leading up to the first committee meeting, the committee felt that they wanted survey input from the students and staff. The consultant at first tried to talk them out of it, but realizing how passionate they were and how important this was as a school district, given our unique situation, she agreed. Students were surveyed at the end of April. They asked for input on all the factors I mentioned in the previous slide, font, color, etc. Students and staff also had an option to submit samples. They could be samples that were, I'll say, found on the internet. They could be samples that they developed on their own. The consultant then took those results and compiled them, and I say that because there were many duplicates in submissions. There were unfortunately some inappropriate submissions. So she went through and she compiled all those results. The committee then reviewed and made recommendations for the designer based on that. Why I point out that specific change to the process is that did add a considerable amount of time to the process that was not originally intended when we outlined this project. In addition, the committee also requested and attempted to complete this before graduation day 2021. I don't need to tell you, today is October 11th. That did not happen. Consultant thought we were on a pretty tight timetable as it was. She felt we might be able to get images selected before June 16th last year, but the style guide definitely would not have gotten done, But we only would have gotten there if there were no delays, and there were some delays that made it not happen. So, important for everyone to know, what did the staff and the students say with regards to what they wanted the mascots to look like? So, they were given a list of keywords. There were check boxes as to which keywords they wanted to select. They could select as many as they want. They could have selected all of them, they could have selected one of them, they could have selected none of them. They also had an option to write in words if they felt there was a word that didn't reflect what they were interested in. Pascack Hills and Pascack Valley nearly had identical words. They're listed in the order that they got the votes in. So for Pascack Hills, strength got the most votes, followed by fierce, confident, and brave. At Pascack Valley, powerful, strength, fierce, and bold. So you see, 3 of the 4 words overlapped in both schools. Second question at Pascack Hills was, did people prefer an image that incorporated head and hooves or full body? And they were provided some samples of what that could look like. It wasn't the custom design, but this way they understood what the images could look like. And they chose head and hooves over full body by large majority. At Pascack Valley, we broke that up into 2 different questions because when studying panther images, they found that some organizations, high schools, colleges, and professional organizations did a forward-facing panther, and some chose a side-facing panther. So the committee felt it was important to get that input from the students and the staff on what they chose. Again, majority, they went with a side profile as opposed to the straight-on forward-facing. The second question they asked was head only or full body. So that same question that Pascack Hills asked. Pascack Hills talked about asking a side profile versus a forward-facing one. We had a lot of trouble finding any forward-facing Bronco, and the 1 or 2 that we saw, we realized why there aren't a lot of forward-facing Broncos. So they didn't even want to ask that question. They knew it would be a side profile. As far as font goes, students were shown what a sans serif font is versus a serif font, and they were given some options so they could see what that meant. They were split, literally right down the middle, both schools, leaving the committee to kind of make this decision. In the end, what the committee decided to do was turn it to the designer and ask the designer to give us a couple of options when giving us custom designs, and then from there the committee can narrow it down. At Pascack Hills, there were 20 submissions of sample Broncos. By and large, it was like the Denver Broncos and other, I'll say, known Bronco logos that you could Google and find. There were a few samples, and you'll see later, that actually the 2 designs that the committee came down to were both inspired, one by an alum and one by a current student. And then at Pascack Valley, over 40 submissions of samples of Panthers. Again, by and large, ones that already exist, but they had a few more unique ones than Pascack Hills. So in May and June, the input was sent to the designer. Beginning of May, rather, the input was sent to the designer. So by the time we met in the middle of April, got a survey together, got it out, got the results, reviewed the results, compiled it, and had a report together that took about 2 to 3 weeks to do. Input was sent to the designer in the beginning of May. It took the designer 3 to 4 weeks, and I say that because some designs started to trickle in around in the 3rd week, but we decided we didn't want to do anything until we had all the designs because we didn't want to start making decisions without having all the information in front of us. Each committee went through the designs and immediately discarded 2 of the designs, which was quite interesting. The consultant was surprised at how quickly the committee came to it. And I say came to it within 10 minutes. They had discarded 2 of the designs. At Pascack Hills, they felt that the designs needed hooves. 2 of the designs that came back had no hooves. It was just a head. And after seeing that and seeing the ones with the hooves, they felt that unanimously, they felt it needed hooves. And they did not like the fonts in either of those 2 images that it discarded. So they felt between having it add hooves, not liking the fonts, it was too much of a redesign to do, and they didn't want to focus their energy on that. They wanted to focus their energy on these other 2 designs. Pascack Valley, they discarded 2 images, opposite ends of the spectrum as to why. The first image that they dismissed, they felt it looked too cartoonish or middle school. They didn't want to be associated with looking too young, and they felt that that image that was there was too young. And the other one, on the flip side, it looked, as they put it, like an old wise man. The cat face was an older looking cat face. So they wanted to dismiss that one as well. They didn't feel it was the appropriate image for the school. So, like I said, each committee felt strongly about 2 of the designs. They sent revision requests back to the designer in late May, early June. The hope was to come to a final design that first week of June for a vote so it could be done by graduation day. However, there was another unfortunate delay in the process, and we could not get it done in time. So we decided to regroup and pick this up in September when more time could be dedicated to it. September and October, the committees reconvene. And Pascack Hills had 1 meeting and was able to get this done. The revisions they had requested came in exactly as they had asked. They reviewed the designs, and in that meeting, they felt they had their 2 that they wanted, and they were done. Pascack Valley, after seeing the designs that came in, wanted additional revisions. So we needed to have a second meeting to go over the requested revisions from the first meeting. So it took a little bit longer. But we did, as a group, come to a consensus. And without further ado, here is what the committees came up with. At Pascack Hills, I don't know why this is like so dramatic. My computer's just, any day now. Here we go. So at Pascack Hills, these are the 2 images they came up with. The one that says number 1 on the left, that is largely inspired by an alum who submitted a Bronco very early on. It's not the same image as the alum. It is different, but all of the committee was drawn to it because they liked what the alum had. They felt that it needed a little more polish, it needed a little more, and that's how they envisioned it coming to. They wanted that big, bold Broncos in there. So that's where number 1 comes from. Number 2 is inspired by a student. One of the students submitted this beautiful drawing. I don't know if it's a Bronco or a horse, but the beautiful drawing, very intricate though. And everyone quickly realized that the intricacy of what the student submitted would never be able to be in the logo, but they loved the mane of the drawing that that student had provided. So they wanted to see some accentuation to the mane and see how it's like sticking out a little bit. They didn't want it to be too flowy because they didn't want it to be, quote, too pretty. They wanted to keep that fierce look, but that was greatly inspired by a student's drawing. For the Panthers, again, I don't know why the computer does this. I did this all day long hoping it would like be a little bit quicker, but no. So the image on the left, a lot of time went into this. When it first came in, they didn't like how the ears were not quite pinned back enough. They didn't like the initial colorings of the panther, and the neck had these 3 weird points to it as opposed to coming to 1 point. They felt that when this image gets broken out, they wanted it to be a simple, clean line. So they decided to go to having a simple line that comes to a point. They felt it would be better than having it be sideways like that and then come to a straight line. They thought it would look a little awkward. So imagine that Pascack Valley Panthers words were not there, that would be what you could put like on a shirt, for example, or on a helmet. So that's why and how they came to number 1. They liked that the green at the top of the Panthers was there, but it transitioned to the white because with green all the way through, you kind of lost where it said Panthers in the head of the Panther because it was like all green. Number 2, they really enjoyed that because they felt it was still a side profile, it was still very fierce, but it was a different angle to the neck. If you break that Panther out, it is more of a straight line, but because it's kind of sitting upright as opposed to standing upright as opposed to going forward, they felt that that line would look normal on a printed shirt. The Pascack Valley words are inverted to white so that you can see the breakup between the Panthers and the actual Panther head. So that's why that white is there. So, next steps, depending on how things go here, the students and staff would like to vote sooner rather than later. After the designs are selected, a style guide will be developed, and what that style guide would do is provide copies of images so that we can tell, okay, this image gets used on letterhead, this image gets used on t-shirts, this image gets used on printing large posters, etc. It would also do things like break up the font from the picture of the respective head of the animal. So this way you have that ability to just use the words or just use the animal's head when you do it. It would give instruction on how to do things. We would also use that guide to standardize future letterhead, business cards, and print materials. That doesn't mean take everything we have now and throw it out. It's quite the opposite. It would give us time to start planning those things so that when we need to order new printed materials, we are ready to do something that's consistent with what the brand is decided upon. Before any questions, I just wanted to give a few thank yous. The students, a couple of the students told me that they felt like they were in a little bit of a precarious position given how polarized this discussion has been for months, but they stuck with the committee nonetheless, so I really appreciate the students doing that. And at first they were a little reluctant to give input, but then toward the end, they really, their voice was found and they were all in. The staff, similar thing. Some of them were reluctant to continue on with this because of what was going on prior to it, but they stuck with it. And a special thanks to the art teachers. They were very helpful in discussing colors and shading and that type of thing. Athletic directors played a major role in helping us understand what could and could not be done as far as printing. Mrs. Martin, it was very nice of her to join us and for a board member to understand what the process looked like from beginning to end, because I know there were questions about the process for the selection. So I kind of, I don't want to say demanded, but I was pretty emphatic that I wanted at least one board member involved. And to the administration and community for the patience and how long this took. So that is my presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And if I remember correctly, the board really wanted to see the artwork and sort of give the thumbs up to see if we can send it to a vote.
Great.
I thought they all four looked great.
Thumbs up.
Yep.
Here's what I would like to recommend, however. If in fact this Board of Education sends back to the committee the ability to vote on one of the two of them, we need to either allow them to select which one they prefer, and then when it comes to the board meeting, if it meets the criteria, we vote to accept. One thing that I would be concerned about is if they chose one and the board decided that they wanted to choose another one.
Well,
I think it's very important we figure out how.
Yep.
I'm just being very clear. We've gone through a very long journey of this process. So
my suggestion would be if these two for Valley and two for Hills logos are good, we'll give it to the students and faculty for vote, and whatever it is, you've seen what it is, we accept that.
It's almost like speak now or forever hold your peace. If you have a
I was
problem with
just
any
gonna
of the
say
four,
that.
speak now. I saw everybody giving thumbs up. I saw all heads nodding. If anybody has a problem with any of the other two, speak now.
yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Well, I just said it differently.
It's just very important that our community, we do this right. Right.
But I think that we don't have to vote at the end, like.
No, we're not.
Saying that these are all within the parameters we set, that whatever the students pick at this point is it.
Agreed.
We don't need to-
Yes.
I agree.
And the Board of Education does need to approve that as a
Approve,
matter of
not-
approval.
Not voting.
So we're approving whatever they pick from that point.
No, we only said we were having discussion if anything was objection.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we're
I don't
done.
think anyone finds anything objectionable, so it can go out for super vote.
I agree with Mike.
Okay.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yep.
So
Just for
does it
total
need-
transparency.
Does it need to come back to the board once there's a vote?
I think that, I don't think we need to do a vote, but I think the students maybe can present it and say,
Sure.
this is what we chose for each school, and we're done.
Yeah, we'd like to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I would just ask maybe just look at the regulations under the policy, because the mascot name fell under policy, so those images fall under
I think it's a good thing to double check it, and I think it's a good thing to, well, Paul, you're kind of the expert on the process.
But I'm not an expert on policy.
That's great. We'll make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed, and so we're good.
Just to be clear, do we have a green light to do a vote with the students?
Yes. Yes.
We do?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is there anyone at all that opposes that? Okay, we are all in agreement, and you have the go-ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, is there any additional information that falls under new business this evening?
I just have one thing.
Sure.
So I want to provide an acknowledgement. You know, a lot of times we get the sports reports, but I want to acknowledge the marching band. So I've been to all the home football games, and they've really been exceptional. They're so good that they got the football team a 5-yard delay of game penalty to start the second half because they played too long. But on a serious note, I have twin third graders. My son plays on the team. One of the players on the football team actually is a drummer, so he takes off his shoulder pads and he plays at halftime.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
One of my twins, after one of the games, asked in the car if he could play an instrument in school and wanted to play the drums. So that was really inspired by the marching band. So had it not been for that, you know, he wouldn't have been exposed to it and wouldn't have asked for that. So, you know, I think it's important to acknowledge the work of our students. And so thank you to all of the marching band people out there.
I have a drum set in my house doing nothing right now. I will gladly bring it to your house.
Yeah.
Free transportation. Hills.
No, I'm sure the Valley Marching Band is just as good. I just haven't had a chance to say that.
That's great. Any additional new business? Very good. We now move on to comments from the public, and we invite the public to come to the microphone, again stating your name, town of residence, and you may speak on any topic that you like for a maximum of 5 minutes.
Bob Axe, Hillsdale. Just going back to the trips, and I appreciate that you guys are taking a measured approach on this and going to consult and sort of review things as we go along and see where things are going. I did hear one of you mention relying on the CDC data, which I can appreciate. I just hope you don't bring it down to like a color and number code. There's so much data that's available on the CDC website that could show the data that I provided you, so you don't have to trust me. It's right here. It shows you that the United States is worse than this country and that country as far as the COVID spread goes. And you actually have real data to help base some of your information and how you guys ultimately decide.
Great.
And I just think it's important not to, if it comes down to this country is number 3 in orange, it's out, it's just not really doing all your due diligence. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kim Wims, Hillsdale, New Jersey. It was mentioned with regarding to the vote of the mascot that both staff and students would be voting. I was just curious as to why the staff would have a say in what the mascot would actually be. I feel like the students, basically from what they've been through, really are the spirit of the community with the sports programs and whatnot, and I feel it's important that their say be the most important, given the future of the school. Staff can come and go, but the students are really, once they've gone through the school, they're part of that school and that history, and I just wanted to, and no disrespect to the staff at all, I just feel like, the students really are the lifeblood of what the mascot is, and I think that they should have more of a say. So I just wanted to make that statement.
All right, thank you.
Just a note, I don't want to speak for anyone here, just in terms of process, when we did agree what the process would be, the faculty also voted for the mascot names. So just for some context.
And I have no disrespect to the staff, I think they're all lovely, I just...
Eli Moa, Rivervale, thank you. We're spending a lot of time and money on this mascot when we already have the coolest mascot around. So just wanted to put that out there. We seem to be taking a lot of stock in the kids' opinions, and I think that's great. I'm just curious if we've ever asked the kids if they wanted to keep the Indian. Nobody knows?
It's a moot point. The board's already made a decision, so.
But it's a question. Have we ever asked the kids if they want to keep the Indian? I mean, we're giving them big boy and big girl decisions, and their decisions are going to cost us thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm curious if we asked them all the questions, because we may have found out that they were happy with the Indian. I don't know if you've asked the community. It doesn't seem like our input seems to matter in this equation. Certainly the taxpayer, I don't think, seems to have had a say. I don't think the alumni has. And in my opinion, it's all just for a show, and it's the furthest thing from inclusivity, which is what I think we're trying to do here. Part of it, I guess, goes into what I want to discuss about transparency, accessibility, and accountability in regards to the board, the members, and the school policies. I've had several conversations with the board and superintendents over the last few months, and I appreciate the superintendent always responding to my questions. May not get the answers I like or complete answers and may need follow-up, but I've always gotten a response from Dr. Fishbein, and I really do appreciate that. What is difficult to gauge is where some of the board members themselves stand on some of the issues that people like me in the community raise at meetings like this and other communications. It would be great if we had a better way of communicating, particularly with our own town's board members. Ultimately, it's the board members, not the superintendent, that should be answering to the community and is responsible for everything that goes on in our schools. To the point of transparency, this is critical to avoiding some of the division I think we're witnessing today. The leadership of this board has made significant decisions from my vantage point without properly engaging the community. And to me, the key word is engagement. Currently, for our residents to be informed on the Board of Education initiatives, we have to come physically to the meeting. We can't ask questions on Zoom. And we have to navigate a website that looks great, and I congratulate you for getting an award, but when I try to find some information, it is not easy. We need to come up with some streamlined methods of communication so that the parents and residents can stay involved on important policies and decisions. As far as accessibility, we should be making all of these board meetings available on Zoom with the ability for parents to ask questions. This seemed to work well during the hybrid session, and I would assume everybody agrees that the more community involvement, the better. I was told that the curriculum would be available online shortly. There's been a lot of discussion about the curriculum, and it's a little surprising that it's not readily accessible to all of us. It should have been while we were having these conversations. I believe we can do a lot better in providing the public with timely and more complete information as to the operation and direction of our schools. Lastly, we always want to consider accountability in an operation as large and important as our schools. Our schools have gone through some major transformations in recent years. We have done so at the expense of our students' education and our taxpayers' dollars. Wasteful decisions like the mascot fiasco are examples of where the leadership of this board has chosen to focus. We have also seen very divisive actions taken behind the scenes, like eliminating the tradition of girls wearing white graduation gowns with the boys wearing green. To be clear, I was told that this was a decision to show unity. When I questioned as to whom we were showing unity to, the answer I got was to ourselves. And to me, that's just a bunch of garbage, and I think we all know what it is. We are sending clear, disturbing, and divisive messages to our kids and future generations. Based on my research, there's no one that wants to stand up and take ownership of some of those decisions. I was told the elimination of the white gown was just a school-level decision, so no idea who made that one. And I'll end on this note. At a recent board meeting, one of the members stated that if some of us in the community came to more meetings and paid more attention, we wouldn't have this many questions. And I can't really disagree with that, but I've been coming to some of these meetings, and I will tell you I have more questions and concerns every time I show up. We have entrusted all of you to do this job for us and for our kids. You stepped up, and we thank you for it. But when a member of this board tells their neighbors and community they are going to do something, regarding major issues and then goes back on their word, trust is broken and accountability needs to take hold. We can come to every meeting on the schedule, but if you all don't keep your word, what good will it do? Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, I will close comments from the public, and I will ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
By acclamation, we are adjourned.